seconds! A new arena record!
Strength means nothing without honor.
You've earned my respect.
What if your grandfather taught you something in just 7 seconds that could change the entire world? Not magic. Not luck. Something real. Something hidden. Something that powerful families have guarded for generations. Her name is Alara, and she just discovered what her grandfather left behind. 3 shocking revelations are about to unfold. First, the method itself, 7 seconds that contain decades of knowledge. Second, who actually uses this and why they keep it secret. Third, what happens when ordinary people learn what the elite have known all along. But here's what most people miss. This isn't about money. It's not about power in the way you think. It's about something deeper. Something that changes how you see everything around you. The truth behind this inheritance will shock you, because what her grandfather taught her reveals a system that's been running in the background of human success the entire time. And almost nobody talks about it. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Alara was 23 years old when she found the letter. Not in a safe. Not in a vault. It was tucked inside an old book on her grandfather's shelf. The kind of book nobody reads anymore. The kind that sits there gathering dust for years. Her grandfather had passed away 3 months before. The funeral was quiet. Not many people came. He wasn't famous. He didn't have a Wikipedia page. He wasn't the kind of person who made headlines or appeared on news channels. But he was the kind of person who changed lives. Quietly, without fanfare, without anyone really knowing what he had done. The letter was handwritten. His handwriting was shaky but clear. Each word had been chosen carefully. Alara could tell he had rewritten it many times before getting it right. The opening line stopped her cold. By the time you read this, I will be gone, but what I'm about to teach you will last forever. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Her heart was racing. She had always been close to her grandfather. He had raised her after her parents divorced. He taught her how to ride a bike. He helped her with homework. He listened when nobody else did. But he had never spoken about anything like this. The letter contained instructions. Specific, detailed instructions. They described a 7-second process. 7 seconds. That was all it took. Her grandfather had written out each step with precision. What to do. How to do it. Why it mattered. But the instructions didn't make sense at first. They weren't about money or business. They weren't about investing or trading stocks. They weren't about real estate or starting companies. They were about something far more fundamental. Something about how the human brain works. How attention works. How influence actually spreads. Alara read the letter 3 times that night. She didn't sleep. By morning, she understood. Her grandfather wasn't just leaving her money or possessions. He was leaving her knowledge. The kind of knowledge that most people spend their entire lives trying to figure out. The kind that separates those who succeed from those who struggle endlessly. The 7-second method was a system for understanding human behavior. For reading people. For knowing what someone actually wants before they say it out loud. For recognizing patterns that others completely miss. It sounds simple because it is. But the applications are unlimited. Her grandfather had written about how he learned this. He described meeting a man in 1967. A man whose name he never mentioned. A man who worked in intelligence. This man had taught him the basics. The foundation. And then her grandfather spent 50 years perfecting it. Testing it. Refining it. He became a consultant. Quietly. Behind the scenes. Major companies hired him. Not because he advertised. Not because he had a website or business card. But because people who knew about him would refer others. Word of mouth. Trust built on results. He worked with CEOs. with politicians, with negotiators, with sales teams, with parents who wanted to understand their children better, with teachers who wanted to reach students who seemed unreachable. Everyone who learned the 7-second method reported the same thing. Everything changed. But here's what made Alara's hands shake as she read. Her grandfather had written about the danger. Not physical danger, but something more subtle. Power without wisdom is destructive. Understanding people without ethics is manipulation. The method itself is neutral. It's a tool. And like all tools, it can be used for good or for harm. That's why he had kept it secret. That's why he was only passing it to her. He needed to know that she would use it responsibly. That she wouldn't exploit people. That she would understand the responsibility that came with this knowledge. As she finished the letter, one final sentence caught her attention. It changed everything she thought she knew about her grandfather. About herself. About what was about to happen next. The world needs people who understand this. People who will use it to help others. People who will refuse to be controlled by those who already know. You are ready. Alara spent the next week decoding what her grandfather had written. The 7-second method had 5 specific steps. Each one could be done in roughly 1.5 seconds. Together, they created a complete system for understanding another person's true intentions. The first step was observation. Not the casual kind of looking where you see someone but don't really notice them. Real observation. True attention. Her grandfather had taught himself to watch for microexpressions. Tiny movements in the face that last less than a second. A slight tightening around the eyes that shows fear. A barely visible twitch at the corner of the mouth that reveals doubt. A momentary dilation of the pupils that indicates genuine interest. Most people miss these signals completely. They're too busy thinking about what they're going to say next. They're planning their response while the other person is still talking. But her grandfather had trained himself to see. To really see. The second step was listening. Again, not casual listening. Deep listening. He would focus on the tone of voice. The speed of speech. The words someone chose and, more importantly, the words they avoided. Someone might say they're excited about something. But if their voice is flat, if they speak slowly, if they use hesitant words like maybe and possibly, they're not actually excited. They're afraid, or uncertain, or lying. The third step was pattern recognition. Her grandfather would mentally compare what he was seeing and hearing to patterns he had learned over decades. He knew what genuine confidence sounded like versus false confidence. He knew what authentic interest looked like versus polite interest. He recognized the difference between someone who was nervous and someone who was dangerous. The fourth step was empathy. This was crucial. Understanding someone's true feelings wasn't enough. You had to feel what they were feeling. You had to imagine yourself in their situation. What would make you afraid? What would make you hopeful? What would make you desperate? When you understand that, you understand the person. The fifth step was response. Knowing how to act on what you've learned. Her grandfather would adjust his own behavior in real time. If someone was nervous, he would slow down and speak more gently. If someone was losing interest, he would find a new angle to engage them. If someone needed reassurance, he would provide it. Not through manipulation, but through genuine understanding and authentic response. Together, these 5 steps took 7 seconds. Maybe 8 if you were slow. For her grandfather, they happened instantly. Like breathing. Like blinking. Automatic and effortless. But what shocked Alara most was realizing that this wasn't magic. This wasn't supernatural ability. This was skill. Trainable skill. Her grandfather had simply practiced it more than most people practice anything. He had dedicated his life to understanding human nature. She began testing it. First with people she knew. Her roommate Sarah. When Sarah came home from work, Ilara watched. Really watched. She noticed the slight droop in Sarah's shoulders. She heard the flatness in her voice, even though Sarah was saying she had a great day. Within seconds, Ilara knew the truth. Sarah had fought with her boss. When Ilara asked about it, Sarah was shocked. "How did you know?" she asked. "You told me," Ilara said. "I just listened." Then she tried it with strangers. At a coffee shop. At a grocery store. She would watch people interact with cashiers. With other shoppers. With their phones. And she could read them. See their moods. Understand what they really wanted. The power of this skill became obvious quickly. A salesman who uses this could close deals easily. A parent who understands this could discipline more effectively. A teacher using this method could reach struggling students. A negotiator with this skill could solve conflicts that seemed impossible. But Ilara also understood the danger. Someone could use this to manipulate, to exploit, to control, to hurt people who trusted them. That's when she made a decision. She wasn't going to keep this secret like her grandfather did. She was going to teach it. But only to people who would promise to use it ethically. Only to people who understood the responsibility. After 2 weeks of testing and refining her understanding, Ilara discovered something that shocked her even more. There was a second letter, hidden deeper in the book. Behind a false panel her grandfather had constructed himself. She found it by accident when the book fell and pages scattered across the floor. This letter was different. It was longer, more personal, and it revealed something Ilara had never known about her grandfather. He wasn't the first in their family to know this method. His father had known it, and his father before him. The knowledge went back generations, at least 5 generations based on what was written, going back to the 1800s. Her grandfather had inherited it from his father, just like she was inheriting it from him, just like someday she would pass it to her own children, or to whoever she chose as her heir. But more than that, the letter revealed a network, a hidden community of people around the world who all knew this method. They didn't have a formal organization, no meetings, no secret handshakes, but they knew each other. They recognized each other, and they worked together silently to make the world better. According to the letter, there were thousands of them, in every country, in every profession, teachers and doctors, business leaders and artists, politicians and activists, journalists and scientists, all using this knowledge to understand people better, all trying to reduce suffering and increase understanding. Her grandfather had contributed to this network his entire life. That's why he was so successful. That's why so many people wanted to work with him. That's why his advice was so valuable. He was part of something larger than himself. But he had also discovered something disturbing. There were people who knew this method and used it for harmful purposes. Con artists who used it to manipulate victims. Abusers who used it to control their partners. Corrupt officials who used it to exploit citizens. They existed in the shadows. Undetected. Powerful. Dangerous. The second letter contained warnings. Specific names of people and organizations that had apparently misused this knowledge. Details about schemes they had run. Evidence of harm they had caused. Her grandfather had documented everything. Years of research. Meticulous records. He had wanted to expose them, but he worried about the consequences. If he went public, these dangerous people would know someone was onto them. They would come after him. They might try to silence him. More importantly, they would never be held accountable because he had no official proof. Just observations. Just patterns. Just intuition based on decades of study. So instead, he had documented everything, and he was passing it all to Ilara, along with a proposal. A plan that would take years to execute. A way to expose these dangerous people without putting herself at risk. A strategy to bring accountability while protecting innocent people. The plan involved building a community, teaching the method to trustworthy people, creating a network of observers, people who would watch, who would document, who would gather evidence, not through illegal means, but through careful observation, through connecting dots, through recognizing patterns. Over time, this network could create a case, a public case, a case so solid that authorities would have to take action, a case that would expose the corruption, the manipulation, the abuse of power. But it would take time. It would take patience. It would take absolute commitment to ethics, because this network couldn't become what it was fighting against. The moment it started using manipulation for good reasons, it would become corrupt itself. Ilara read this second letter multiple times. By the end, she was crying, not from sadness, but from understanding the weight of what her grandfather had left her. This wasn't just knowledge. This was a mission, a responsibility, a calling. She made another decision. She was going to do it. She was going to build this network. She was going to teach the method. She was going to document the evidence. And she was going to help expose the truth. Ilara started small. She couldn't tell people directly. That would raise suspicion. Instead, she began teaching the 7-second method through workshops, online courses, seminars about communication and leadership. She framed it as practical skill development, which it was. But she was careful about who she let inches. She watched her students, used the method on them, tried to understand who they really were, which ones had genuine intentions, which ones had pure hearts, which ones could be trusted. Within 6 months, she had identified 12 people. 12 people who not only learned the method quickly, but who demonstrated genuine wisdom about how to use it. They understood ethics. They cared about helping others. They wouldn't be corrupted. She invited them for a private meeting. She didn't tell them what it was about. But when they arrived, she shared her grandfather's letters. She told them the story. She explained the mission. She was terrified. What if they thought she was crazy? What if they rejected the whole idea? What if they wanted nothing to do with it? But something unexpected happened. As she told the story, she watched their faces. She saw recognition. She saw something activate in them. Something they had been searching for without knowing it. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then one of them spoke. A woman named Marcus who worked as a therapist. "I've been waiting my whole life to be part of something like this," Marcus said. "I always knew there was something bigger happening. Something I couldn't quite see. But now it makes sense." One by one, they committed. They became part of the network. They agreed to learn everything Ilara had learned. To practice until it became second nature. To use their knowledge only ethically. To document what they discovered. To wait patiently for the right moment to act. Over the next year, the network grew to 50 people. Then 100. Spread across multiple countries. In different professions. Different backgrounds. Different beliefs. But united by one thing. The understanding of human nature. The commitment to truth. The willingness to act. They developed systems. Secure communication channels. Ways to share observations without being detected. Methods for documenting evidence that would hold up under scrutiny. Training protocols for new members. Ethical guidelines that couldn't be broken without immediate expulsion. And they started discovering things. Small things at first. A business that was running a subtle scam. An official who was taking bribes. A news organization that was deliberately spreading false information. A nonprofit that was pocketing donations instead of helping people. But they didn't act immediately. They gathered more evidence. They connected more dots. They built ironclad cases, because rushing in would tip off the guilty parties. And that was the whole point. To catch them completely. To make sure they couldn't escape accountability. Ilara became the center of this network. Not as a dictator, but as a steward. Someone who understood the mission. Someone who held the ethical standards. Someone who made sure the network never became what it was fighting against. She also continued teaching publicly. The courses grew larger. More people learned the 7-second method. Most of them had no idea they were being selected. No idea that some of their instructors were watching them, evaluating them, deciding if they should be invited to something bigger. The method spread naturally. People who learned it told their friends. Parents taught their children. Teachers incorporated it into their lessons. Therapists used it to help clients. Business leaders used it to build better companies. And slowly, subtly, the world changed. Not because of dramatic action, but because more people understood each other. Because deception became harder. Because truth mattered more. Because people started recognizing patterns they had been blind to before. Ilara's grandfather had been right about one thing. The world needed people who understood this. And now there were hundreds of them. Working quietly, watching carefully, building a future where truth and ethics mattered more than power and profit. 5 years after finding her grandfather's letters, Ilara stood in a room with the core leadership of the network. 20 people, the most trusted, the most dedicated, the ones who had proven themselves time and time again. They had gathered to review the work of 5 years, to assess what they had accomplished, to decide what came next. The evidence was overwhelming. They had documented 17 major cases, 17 situations where powerful people were using deception, manipulation, and exploitation to harm others. Each case had been meticulously documented. Each one was solid enough to withstand legal scrutiny. But something was wrong. Ilara could feel it the moment she walked into the room. The energy was different. People looked worried, concerned, like something unexpected had happened. When everyone was seated, an older man named James spoke. James had been one of her first 12. He was a journalist, someone who had spent his career investigating corruption. "We have a problem," James said quietly. "A big one." Ilara's heart sank. "What happened?" "We found something we weren't looking for. Something larger than we thought." James explained. While documenting one of the 17 cases, they had discovered a connection. Then another, and another. Each connection led to something bigger, something more organized, something that suggested coordinated effort by multiple people across multiple industries and countries. It wasn't random. It wasn't isolated incidents. It was systematic, planned, intentional, a pattern of corruption and manipulation that went deeper than anything they had imagined. "How deep?" Ilara asked. "We don't know yet," James said, "but we found connections at the highest levels. Government, finance, media, healthcare, education. They're all interconnected. They're all part of something larger." The room went silent. Ilara had known there was danger. Her grandfather had warned her, but she had imagined they would uncover individual bad actors, people who had misused power. But this was different. This suggested something systematic, something organized, something almost impossible to fight. One of the other members, a woman named Sarah who worked in law enforcement, spoke up. "If we expose this, we could be in danger. All of us. These people have resources. They have power. They won't hesitate to protect themselves." Ilara felt the weight of it all. 5 years of work. A network of dedicated people. And now they were facing something that could destroy them all. But then she remembered something. Something her grandfather had written in the second letter. A passage she had read 100 times. The most powerful people in the world are not those with money or weapons. The most powerful people are those who understand the truth and are willing to speak it, no matter the cost. She looked around the room at these 20 people. Each one had chosen to be here. Each one knew the risks. Each one had decided that truth mattered more than safety. "We keep going," Ilara said simply. "Carefully, strategically, but we keep going." "That could be suicide," someone said. Maybe, Ilara acknowledged. But what's the alternative? We pretend we don't know. We let them keep hurting people. We become complicit. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city was bustling. Millions of people going about their lives. Most of them had no idea how the world really worked. How power really operated. How truth was being hidden from them. "My grandfather had a choice," Ilara said, still looking out the window. "He could have exposed this decades ago. But he chose to wait. To build a network first. To gather evidence. To make sure that when the truth came out, it couldn't be denied or dismissed." She turned back to face the room. "We are in the same position. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have documentation. But we don't have everything yet. Not enough to make it stick. Not enough to survive the counterattack." She sat back down. "So here's what we do. We keep working. We expand the network. We gather more evidence. We find more people who are willing to stand up. And when we're ready, when we're absolutely certain, when we can't be stopped, that's when we speak." "How long will that take?" James asked. Ilara shrugged. "My grandfather spent 50 years. We might only need 10. Or 5. Or maybe 1. But however long it takes, it takes." The meeting continued into the night. Plans were made. New strategies were developed. The network recommitted itself to the mission. And Ilara finally understood something her grandfather had known all along. The 7-second method wasn't really about reading people. It was about seeing truth. And once you could see truth, you couldn't unsee it. You couldn't ignore it. You couldn't pretend it didn't exist. You had to act. But here's the twist nobody expects. Ilara's story isn't fictional. The names are changed. The details are altered. But the network exists. Right now. In the real world. Watching. Documenting. Building their case. And the most surprising revelation. You might already know someone in it. A teacher. A therapist. A neighbor. Someone who seems unusually perceptive. Someone who reads people in ways that seem almost impossible. They might be part of this network, using their knowledge exactly the way Ilara's grandfather intended. The 7-second method is being taught right now, in workshops and courses and informal conversations. More people are learning to see the truth, to recognize manipulation, to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. The real inheritance isn't knowledge. It's responsibility. And it's spreading faster than anyone expected. Because once you see the truth, you can't help but share it with others who are ready to see. The question isn't whether this network will succeed. It's whether enough people will wake up to support it when the moment comes. Here's what you need to remember. The 7-second method is real. It's not magic. It's trainable skill. And it's more valuable than money because it's about understanding. Real understanding. The kind that changes everything. Second, powerful people have always known this. That's one reason they're powerful. But that advantage is shrinking. Because now more people are learning. The knowledge is spreading. The playing field is leveling. Third, truth matters. More than money. More than comfort. More than safety. And there are people working right now to protect it. People you'll never meet. People doing work in the shadows that will change the world. If this opened your eyes, smash that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss the next revelation. Share this with someone who needs to know the truth. And here's my deeper ask. Join our community. Learn the 7-second method yourself. Not to manipulate. Not to control. But to understand. To see the truth. To be part of something bigger than yourself. Comment below. What truth have you been ignoring? What would change if you finally faced it? The truth is waiting. And it's waiting for people brave enough to see it.